Из-за большого количества отрицательных комментариев, связанных с Яндексом, с переводчиком, с озвучкой точнее, я решил оставить оригинал, только добавить субтитры от Яндекса, потому что переводить видео я не собираюсь. Я этим заниматься не хочу, это занимает невероятно много времени, а результат примерно такой же. Так что, если что, дамы и господа, ставьте пальцы вверх, ставьте пальцы вниз, пишите комментарии. А самое главное, переходите к Джозефу на канал, смотрите его видео, он очень интересный блогер. Вот. И вот, пожалуйста, вторая часть, так что приятного вам просмотра. People think that there is no poverty in the US. I'm not asking you to shit on your country. There's poverty in Russia, there's poverty in the US, there's poverty in Canada. Anyone who's been to the Appalachia region or West Virginia, for the matter, can see that there's poverty in the U.S.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, like, have you had to deal with those kinds of people? Have they asked you any of those questions? What have you told them? Do you have anything to say about that?
I mean, I think, like you said, these countries are the same. You have nice places, and you have places that are not doing well. You know, wherever you have people, you're going to have that. You're going to have, as a Christian would say, wherever you have people, you're going to have sin. Yeah, I mean, America can be great. Canada can be great. But I would tell these people that Russia is better now, in my opinion. I think that, you know, the argument might be about freedom versus control. You know, like, you know, if you're left-leaning, you might feel like, oh, Russia's too controlling. If you're right-leaning, you might feel like, well, no, Russia's great because my teenage daughter can take the metro to the university and I know she's probably not going to be killed by somebody. But if we're living in New York, I'm going to be scared every day that something's going to go wrong. Now, someone on the left will say, oh, well, America's more free. Well, free for what? For me to get killed? You know? I mean, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you're talking about because, I mean, and we're starting to talk about safety, and in essence, you did touch upon it. So you've lived in New York, correct? You mentioned that?
Yeah.
Now you're living in Moscow. These are two gigantic cities.
Yeah.
Now, in your opinion, it's safer in Moscow than it's safer in New York?
Absolutely, no question. And if you haven't lived in both places, or at least been to both places, you probably can't believe what I'm saying, but it is a ridiculous difference. I mean, I can't believe it living in Moscow that it's like this. I cannot believe it. You know, growing up in America and going to different big cities and living in different big cities, I just assumed that this is the way it had to be, that this is the way it was, that if you're going to have so many people living on top of each other and this dense, it's going to be very dirty and there's going to be lots of crime and it's going to be dangerous because you just have so many people together. It does not have to be that way. It does not have to be that way. I mean, Moscow, I mean, people won't believe me. It's clean. It's safe everywhere you go. I mean, I did a video, you know, Moscow's like what? Where I got off on every stop of one metro line and did a 360-degree view, and I was looking for, you know, scary people, scary places, dirty things. And, you know, because I wanted people to see and know, people in the West, it doesn't have to be crime infested. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be dangerous. It doesn't have to be dirty. In New York, so when I was living in New York, it was a while ago because I was a student and I'm 48 now. And it was like Gotham City, you know, like in Batman shows. You know, it was scary. As a young person, it was exciting, though. That was part of the thrill. And then when I went there on vacation, like 10, 20 years later, it did start to clean up. It did become nicer, in all fairness to New York. But from what I understand, the last 10 years, it's gotten bad again, you know? So it's crazy. It's very, very interesting coming here. It's very eye-opening living here.
Well, the interesting part regarding safety, and this happened to me when I was riding up from my friend's wedding in Pennsylvania. I was riding my motorcycle, that's why I said riding, to Toronto because I lived in Mississauga, and I had to stop off in Buffalo to get gas. And I guess I stopped off in the wrong area because I had a police officer pull up to me. A black guy comes out, and it's mostly like urban decay around me. And he comes out and he's looking at me. And I spent 7 years in the U.S. I know the difference when a cop is looking at you to see if you're a threat, or when they're looking at you going, "What the hell are you doing here? Are you insane, white man?" You know? Or white boy. As soon as I got that look from that police officer, I gassed up and I got out of there quickly. Have you had
so true.
Have you had any similar feelings whilst going into the poor, badder areas here?
Absolutely. I've had stories like that. I mean, I remember distinctly stopping at a gas station once. And
in Moscow, you've had the same feeling?
No, in America.
In America, okay.
And I was scared, you know? And I mean, I just thought it was a regular gas station. I started looking around, and there are, you know, scary people around. I can see them, you know? It's ridiculous, you know? And that can happen anywhere, even in my small town in Florida, which is a conservative state, by the way, and is nicer than most states. You still have to be careful. You still have to always have an eyes in the back of your head wherever you go, you know? And I'm still like that in Russia just because I've learned to be that way, you know, being in America for so long. And it's probably not a bad idea to always have your guard up. But I have never seen a spot where I need to have my guard up here. Never.
You got to rewatch this interview for whenever you go see your family back in the U.S. so you remember that you have to get your guard back up, because you can't go entirely soft. I mean, you see people now on their phones crossing the street on a sidewalk, thinking nothing bad can happen. Same thing. They've gone soft because people used to not stop, so they would look around. Now that people do stop mostly, I've seen it, right? Sometimes people are distracted or they're under the influence, and the other people are thinking they're safe. They try to cross, and boom, that's it. Lives are lost.
Right.
Same thing. You get too comfortable with safety, then you go back home to an unsafe place, for example, and gotta watch out, man.
Yeah.
I have many different kinds of stories in the States where I was just driving around, and the stuff that you see, it goes counter to what people here who've never been to outside of Russia, to any other places, what they actually say. Because here they'll say how bad it is here, how dangerous it is here, everything like that. But either way, have you been to other cities in Russia in these past, 6-8 months, something like that?
Well, I've been to St. Petersburg. I've been to Yaroslavl. On vacation before we lived here, I went to Suzdal, I went to Rosa Huter. So that's pretty much the only places I've been to. Okay.
I've been to Suzdal. I have a video on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Actually, I like that video. It's nice. The shots from the sky are quite nice.
I picked it out because I saw pictures. I was like, that's the old Russian village I want to go see. They had an old high tower there, but it was closed when I was there, so I couldn't go up.
I can't remember if it was open or closed, just because, my daughter, she's 5. She was 4 when we went, and having a little kid, going around, walking around, traveling when it's kind of hot, doesn't always work to your favor, your advantage. Yeah. So you can't just go and explore everything, unfortunately.
Right.
You know? So, which of those cities did you think was the most interesting, and why?
Well, I like St. Petersburg a lot, and I highly recommend it to people who have a romantic idea of vacationing in Europe, let's say, because St. Petersburg, it looks like, I think, the romantic idea of Europe, but it's not dangerous like Europe is, in my opinion, from what I can tell. And it's also way cheaper than vacationing in Europe. I would say the same thing about Rosa Huter, except it's not like Europe necessarily. It's like a small town European ski village. You know, it's only a few years old. I think I assume Moscow had it built for the Olympics or something like that. But it's also fantastic. So I really like those two places. So hopefully I can go again. I mean, St. Petersburg's easy. You take a train overnight from Moscow and you're there. I've been there maybe 3 or 4 times. So.
Okay. Well, I highly recommend going to Kazan, Nizhny Novgorod, out east. I want to visit down south. I want to go to Dagestan. I want to go to Chechnya. I want to go to those areas. Drive. I don't like to fly because you don't get to see all of the other smaller areas. You fly over them. You don't see them. You just see airport, city. So we've been last year or this year we didn't go anywhere within Russia. Right. We went to see my wife's family in Bulgaria, but hopefully next year maybe we'll get to travel around a little bit more.
Well, your child is small, right? So.
Yeah, she's okay. She's surprisingly good in a car. Surprisingly good. I mean, I know people with kids that after 10 minutes you want to jump out of a moving vehicle just to get away from all of the screaming and shouting. You're like, I'll tolerate the pain. I just don't want to tolerate the pain in the car.
Well, what I've noticed is if they're not at least 5, they won't remember the vacation anyway. So
yeah.
If they're under 5, the vacation is for you to take cute pictures of them with you in these famous spots.
That's true. Since you've been here, what has been like your favorite thing to do in Moscow, for example? For recreation.
For recreation. Well, I like the outdoor gyms that you guys have, like everywhere. Like, you know, I everywhere I look, practically when I step outside, I can see a playground. And I'd say about a quarter of those have like a literal gym, you know, for men or for men and women to, you know, bodybuild on, you know, pull-ups and push-ups and stuff like that. So, you know, I love just going out with my kids and they can play and I can work out. You know, that's fantastic. And I know it sounds stereotypical and stupid of a tourist, but I also love Red Square. I mean, Red Square is beautiful. You know, it's like, you know, growing up in America, you know, Disney is beautiful, but it's fake. You know, I mean, Red Square is like a castle and like a big castle wall and a park nearby and a bell tower and people in costume and yummy food and a beautiful old mall, and it's just like fantastic, you know. I thought it was kind of silly that their city walk has Christmas looking lights up year round, but it's kind of nice. You know, I'm kind of getting used to it.
Have you been inside of the Kremlin?
When I first came, or the second time I came, we bought tickets to go to different exhibits. So you tell me if it's the Kremlin or not. I went to see like old costumes and wagons from czars.
Yeah, it's the armory.
The state castle, the state historic museum, whatever, the Red Castle. And then I remember we paid for seeing like a jewelry exhibit.
Well, it's in the armory. So you have the jewelry exhibit, as you would call it. You would have the carts and the chairs that the czars would sit in. And you go inside of the Kremlin wall. You have the churches, the 5 churches. You can actually see the royalty from back then buried, their families and everything like that. So. Oh
wow. Okay. Yeah. So I've been there then. Right?
Okay.
I think there's a giant cannon, like a really big old cannon.
There's a bell. Yeah, the cannon. There's a huge bell as well, if you can remember. It's right in front of one of the churches. So regarding this, I mean. And again, questions are coming up randomly. Obviously, I never prepare for these things. That way, they're a lot more fun. So in this case, I mean, you've there's been people in the U.S. who've obviously called Russia this hellhole, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But you've seen the amount of churches that we have here. Did that surprise you when you first came?
I don't think it surprised me when I first came. I think over time, that definitely stands out to me. And I mentioned this almost as a joke in a lot of my videos. Oh, look, another church, more churches. because the whole idea is I'm trying to tell people in the West and Americans, like subtly and kind of in a funny way, you know, if this is just a country of a bunch of bad guys, why are there churches everywhere? Why are there recycle bins? Why is there handicapped access? You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't care about these things if you were just a bad place full of bad people. It's ridiculous, you know? And there are churches everywhere. I mean, I grew up in the South in the U.S., so there are churches everywhere there too. Mm-hmm. So that didn't hit me immediately. But over time, it's like there's churches everywhere, you know, and there's things that the government is doing everywhere that you would not do if you were just a quote unquote bad place, you know.
Our churches look better than your churches.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're beautiful and shiny. Now, a person might prefer the design. Well, even then, you know, you're preferring the design of, let's say, a church, a Gothic church, or a church in Europe. American churches, I mean, no offense to America, but they're all over the place, and some of them are just buildings, you know.
They look like regular houses. I mean, in defense, to give a plus to an American church is just like I think in the synagogue and in other places you have pews, so you have rows and you sit and you listen. Whereas in Russian churches there are no rows, nothing. You go in there and there's a church service and you stand and you listen.
Yeah, you're right. There's no pews in some of these older churches I've been to. Very, interesting.
Yeah. But now that you've been living here, you're not a tourist. You've been here for like 8 months. Did you find that people here are more rude or less rude than, let's compare it to New York, to be fair, Moscow and New York?
Well, if we're going to compare it to New York, I think they're the same. And that's what I was about to say. I mean, if I don't think too deeply about it, you know, I can say Russians are ruder than Americans. But I've also said before, it could be a cold weather versus a warm weather thing. It could be that people in the cold weather around the world are a little bit rougher around the edges in person or when you first meet them. And people in warm weather are a little bit happier and nicer when you first meet them.
But do you find us more direct?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I also give the caveat that, again, I'm not down on Americans, but I think that Russians in general, they are a bit rough in person, but they can quickly go deep with you and have a deep, meaningful conversation with you. I think that Americans are culturally well trained to be very friendly with everyone on the street, split second, nice, polite. But there's a trade-off to that, and that is you're not deep. You know what I mean? And I think it's just natural as a human being, you know. Am I going to be honest with you? And if I'm honest with you, then I might not be in a good mood, you know. But I will talk deeply with you. If you're going to train me from childhood that I better smile and I better be friendly with everyone, I can do that. But I'm spending so much energy on that, I'm also going to have to put up walls because, and what that means is I can't really get that deep and emotional with people quickly, you know, because I've already had to program myself to be nice, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I have experience with that. But then would you agree that at least now people are more free to express their opinion with each other in Russia, and they don't have to, and as you say, you can go deeper in a conversation more quickly, because in my opinion right now in the US, you can become like an enemy if you just say that you are a Christian person and you don't believe in like alphabet people, LGBT, whatever, propaganda, right? I mean, in this case, you can be an enemy to a person instantly. I mean, you have families that were breaking up because of the previous election stuff. It's very polarized.
Yes.
So in this case, would you agree or disagree that on an individual level, people here are more free to express their opinions with each other and they're not afraid to do so?
Yes, absolutely. And in the U.S., you know, if you do not publicly say what the mass media wants you to say, you will be marginalized, I would say. And if you're someone who's doing something that you and I are doing, which is, at a certain level, publicly, you're not going to do well. they're going to let you have it. You know what I mean? So that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. We'll see what happens now with Elon Musk and Twitter. And
yeah, I'm hopeful. I think that he's a smart guy. He's a businessman. I like people that I guess were on the left, and now they're not necessarily on the right, but they're kind of, they can see what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I have a different opinion on Elon Musk, but this interview is not about that. Just his business practices. He's great at marketing. He's very, very good at marketing. But I wouldn't want to be on the same level as him as a director in the company that he just joined, for example. I wouldn't want to be there. But that's a whole different other conversation. It's interesting what he's doing with Twitter, and I'm hoping that that continues. But I'm pretty sure the machine is going to squash that down pretty soon. Unfortunately, because it would be nice to have a platform where actually all opinions are tolerated rather than just left opinions are tolerated.
Right. And again, I'm not necessarily against the left. I mean, I think it's good to have balance, to have a left and a right, and to have, let's say, freedom versus law and order, right? Mm-hmm. You want the right balance, and as humans, we have different opinions on where that balance is. And I do think, though, that we're living in a time where the left is off the rails right now. Like, you might have a family member that's off the rails for a while, So I don't think the left is evil. But as a Christian traditional value guy, the right is definitely a better idea for me.
But would you agree or disagree with the fact that in the States, and the same thing I noticed in Russia as well, conservatives will hear you out, will listen to your, I'm not talking about politicians, I'm talking about regular human beings here, will listen to your opinion, hear you out, will be okay with a debate and a conversation, right? And different ideas. Whereas the left at this moment, just like in Russia, has gone, and not the classic liberal, which is now a conservative, in my opinion.
Right.
The left now has gone entirely rabid, and it's their opinion or no opinion whatsoever. Would you agree or disagree?
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Mm. And that makes me wonder, is that because the right is on the right, is correct, and the left is not? And so they can't allow you to have a discussion. They've got to shut you down. They've got to shut you up. It just makes me wonder. I'm not saying that's absolutely the way it is, but...
Oh, I'll say it. I don't care. That is exactly the way it is. I have, in this case, I have a filter. I know what to say and what not to say. In this case, it is correct. When you are afraid to show up to debate someone because the stuff that you've said or wrote can't be backed up by anything, whether it's logic or facts, you're wrong, 100%. And I'm right because I have the backing by facts, by history, by whatever. I'll outright say it. I mean, that was my opinion, is that conservatives are classical liberals now, and they're open to debate. And I was always friends with conservatives in the U.S., to be honest with you. I always had a difficult time having an honest conversation with liberals in the U.S. Just like it's in Russia, it's the exact same thing. We just have a lot more conservatives.
Right. That's awesome. And hopefully people that are sensible, that are in the center, let's say, they can tell. They can see what's going on, and they can see that, there are people that are willing to debate and talk and be open, and there are people that absolutely will not. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, listen, it's been a very interesting conversation. And that's how my interviews are. They're conversations, really. In the end, though, this is open mic. And if there's anything that you would like to say, good, bad, positive, negative, I don't care. Okay? go ahead if you have any ideas that come to your mind, any kind of great speeches. You can promote your YouTube channel. Again, don't care. This is your time, open mic. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I guess my great speech, one thing that I've thought of recently since I started doing this channel is I really would hope that anyone listening to this, whatever citizen you are, wherever you are in the world, that you would really try. I think it's important for all of us to remain sane and remember that a group of people in a country, or people in a country and a culture, that is not necessarily the government of that country and that culture. So just like I would be a fool to hate all Germans because of the Nazis, right? And I'm not saying I have a problem with the American government or Russian government. That's not what I'm hinting at. I'm just saying wherever you fall on the spectrum, whatever country you're for or not for, if you find that you really despise a country, let's say, I think it'll help society not get too crazy if you can separate out the country's government from the people of that country, if that makes sense. Because otherwise, I hate to say it, but I mean, if you cannot separate the two, you're headed towards perhaps genocide. If you're a person that's like, oh, I hate all Russians, or I hate all Brits, or I hate all Americans, or I hate all Germans. And with this channel, that's what I'm hoping to do, is just try to turn the temperature down, so we can all get along.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck doing that. You should know by now in the comments section that it's going to be a tough road ahead if that's your goal.
Well, I mean, my hope is in our lifetimes, right?
Yeah.
When we're old and gray, we might look back and say, wow, we helped this world be a slightly better place.
Well, in speaking honestly without making any jokes, every little bit helps. And if everyone does a little bit, if everyone says, okay, well, I have 8 hours of my workday, for example, or I have 16 hours of awake time, that 20-second interaction that I've had with someone shouldn't ruin my day and shouldn't push me to reciprocate that with that same interaction to somebody else entirely.
Absolutely, you are so right. I tell myself this every day. I have a prayer, and I'm thinking, what is the best thing I can do? I cannot help everyone be a good person, but I can be a good father, and I can take my 5 kids, and hopefully I can help them become fruitful, productive adults. And if everyone could do that, if everyone could say, I'm going to be a parent, so I'm just going to make my kids as fantastic as they can be in a positive way for this world, we wouldn't have problems, and if you can go a little bit beyond that, perhaps be a Christian, perhaps be a philanthropist, perhaps, have the correct political point of view that's going to help the world function better. I mean, that's incredible. And what more can we do, and it's easy to get overwhelmed, and it's easy to think, oh, I can't do anything. I can't do, well, you can't do everything, but you can do something, and it's just like running or lifting weights. I'm not going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger tomorrow. I mean, I wouldn't want to, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
I mean, I am just going to practice every day, and every day I'm not going to do that good, but I'm going to do a little bit better than yesterday. I'm going to get a little bit stronger. I'm going to get a little less fat. I'm going to get a little smarter. I'm going to be a little more spiritual. I'm going to be a little bit better father, or a little bit better citizen of my country, or perhaps the world.
That would be a very good place to end, because it was a very nice, little tiny soliloquy, speech, whatever you want to call it. But just to add to the point, have you ever had this? And you have to be very self-aware to be able to stop yourself from doing this. And I would urge other people to try and do this themselves. I was once in Obi, where you buy tools and equipment and construction material.
It's like Home Depot in Russia.
Exactly. It's exactly like Home Depot or Renault Depot in Quebec. But either way, I was in line, and I had a terrible mood for whatever reason, And this lady was next to me, and she did something. She sort of invaded my space, but in a positive way. She was trying to help me out. But at that point, I was in such a bad mood. I didn't say anything at all because I have self-control. But in my head, I was saying lots of things. And then when I finalized the purchase, I had moved on and I was like, wait, no, hold on. She was actually being nice. It was me. It was the state that I was in at that particular moment, that if I didn't control myself, I would have actually said something back and then ruined her mood. Or two, if I wasn't self-aware, I could have carried those negative thoughts onto somebody else and then ruined their mood later on. Right. And I, at that point, I caught myself. I was like, this is all me. And all of a sudden, my bad mood just disappeared because I said, have you ever caught yourself doing something like that?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Yeah. Especially when I would drive in America and I would get mad at how someone else drove. And then I realized, I do that move too.
What? Hog the left lane and not move over?
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean? And you just realize that we're emotional humans and we have a mood and we have to train ourselves to control it, in a good way.
Okay. All right. And I know it differs from state to state, but in some states, man, Americans left lane hog like like it's their business. Oh. In Pennsylvania, sometimes in New Jersey, you're driving through and you're like, get out of the left lane, man. Right. Either way, listen, Joseph, thank you very much. It's been a lovely conversation. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you've made it this far, there's going to be links in the description below to his channel. Go ahead, take a look, subscribe, like, comment, you know the drill, etc., etc. Again, Joseph, thank you very much. Thank you for the conversation. So if you'd like to add anything else before we go ahead.
Thank you so much, Stan, and subscribe to Stan's channel as well.
All right, cool. Thank you, everyone. Ciao, ciao.